All right, well, hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this breakout session. We are going to be talking about common evaluation frameworks for Christian LLMs, measuring what matters. So just before we get started, wanted to do some introductions. My name is Nick Skytland. I am at Gloo. I had spent 25 years at NASA prior to that. I was overseeing technology and partnerships and innovation. And then at Gloo, I'm the head of Gloo Open, a new open initiative at Gloo, and we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the talk in the session today.
And I'm Boisen. I work with Biblica on the Bible technology team. My job title is Data Scientist and Digital Knowledge Architect, and yes, I did make that up.
Like all good titles. Actually, when people come to me and they're like, hey, I want to get a job, I'm like, don't apply for a job. Just think about a job that doesn't exist, make up a title, and like data evangelist. That's a good,
right.
name. All right, well, we want to really have a conversation today. We want this to be participatory. So we're going to share some stuff up front, and then we're going to open it up for a conversation. So this is your fair warning that we want to hear from you during this discussion. We've heard from a lot of amazing speakers so far at Missional AI this year. And obviously, we're all here because we share in this deep conviction that we have this moral imperative right now as technologists and Christians to speak into and shape the future of AI. And I think that really requires us to be intentional in our choices that we are making today, in the conversations that we're part of, and participating in open communities is really important as well. So at Gloo, we're really interested in creating trusted AI capabilities and doing that for the faith ecosystems, but there's a lot of questions about trust, right, in the content. And so what we want to talk about today is a lot of what Eric really set the stage for this morning's keynote, which was phenomenal. Really, in talking about, he had said, AI doesn't just generate words, it generates convictions. It assumes a value set. The alignment matters, right? And alignment must be measured with benchmarks. So we have a lot of questions today about, what big tech is doing on the models they're releasing, the data they're using, the way they're measuring performance of watts per query, which is great, but is it advancing human flourishing? And so today we want to share a little bit about some of those questions that we probably all share and have a discussion about that. Also share some progress, just where we're at with Gloo and with our partners on the benchmarks and standards. And then we'll end the session today by talking about next steps and where we go from here.
Sounds good. So in the interest of time, keeping everything crisp, I'm just going to put the ask right up front. There's three things really that we're talking about today. We need common standards and benchmarks. We want them to be open and collaborative. And so we're inviting others to help us build those and define even what that means. And so there's a QR code here. It'll come back again at the end of the slide. That takes you to a Google form. And if you sign up on that form, you'll get on our mailing list. So no surprises. You could walk out at this point and you would have gotten the meat of it. Please don't, but I'm just saying. Okay, so let's first just talk about the need. And the need is for benchmarks. It's very easy. I'm sure everybody in this room has done it, to try a few ad hoc queries, smile at the results, pat yourself on the back, and say, yeah, it's doing a good job, right? And so if you were to ask your hypothetical chatbot, how am I doing? And it gives you the thumbs up, okay, we're ready to ship it. But in reality, of course, unless you're measuring performance in some objective way, it's really not good enough. How can you know whether all the edge cases are working, even whether the core content is working? Now, there's an extensive set of existing general benchmarks for evaluation that all the foundational off-the-shelf models are using and iterating on, right, ratcheting up their performance. But without the appropriate fine-tuning, is a Christian or a kingdom-aligned language model good enough? How do you know? How do you know how reliable they are? That's a fundamental question. And so that helps ensure both transparency and accountability. It can sort of back up your claims with some empirical results. I know this is reliable, at least in these subject areas, because I've tested it. So another important need is simply to identify the gaps in the performance of systems. It may be very good at one set of questions, maybe biblically grounded facts. It may be not so good at another set of questions, maybe around church history, around theological interpretation, around Christian counseling. There's all these different areas. And so without the ability to measure in different content areas, you really don't know what the gaps are. Likewise, it's very important to us just to be able to evaluate evolving large language models against the foundational models, which are obviously hugely capitalized, advancing very rapidly. And so how well are we doing against those models? Have they essentially become so smart that they've obviated the need for us to do additional fine-tuning, for example? That's a really important question. And because this environment is ever-changing, new systems coming out every week, we expect a lot of change in the space, and so benchmarks give you the ability to say, well, how am I doing this month compared to last month, compared to the month before that? And if we're not making progress, maybe we need to look somewhere else for how to improve these systems. So the AI industry as a whole is driven by these benchmarks. We all know this. And so if we want to build Christian LLMs, we should do no less. That would be my claim. So let me just move quickly through a couple of key challenges in this area to provide some examples of what the challenges are for a Christian LLM. And I use those air quotes deliberately. I'm not going to define what that means. I think there are a lot of possible definitions. And in some ways, the definition will be grounded in the benchmarks we provide. It's very hard to say things about what you haven't tested. But if you can say, well, here's what I've tested, that at least gives you some objective definition of what the capabilities are. So, number one, simply quote Scripture accurately. If I'm bringing in a Bible text, do I get the right Bible text for that verse? Aligning with traditional Christian perspectives on biblical knowledge, but also theology, Christian lifestyle, right? All of our lifestyle questions are not answered in Scripture. We have to find them for ourselves. How do we do that? Also recognizing and respecting the breadth of Christian traditions. I don't think we would want a Christian large language model that said it was broad, but only gave you a Baptist answer, or an Episcopalian answer, or an Orthodox answer. Now, eventually, there may be systems that are precise in that way, but then they should be advertised as precise in that way, rather than claiming to be general if they're only very narrow. Likewise, we'd like to have not sort of shallow answers, but deep answers. If I'm asking for a particular lifestyle question, rather than being told, let's say, no, you should not get a tattoo, that's not Christian. I'd like to see the reasoning behind that. I'd like to see some biblical support. I'd maybe even like to see the reasoning process that led to that understanding. And of course, we have the problem of hallucinations and errors, and as Eric mentioned in the keynote this morning, even biases. So we want to mitigate those, and we also want to provide safeguards. Nobody wants to use a Christian LLM only to find out that it's advocating, well, yes, you should end your life. It looks pretty hopeless. That's not a good answer. But unless you're testing, how do you know? That's really the fundamental point. Along the same lines, if there are plenty of questions in the Christian life for which there isn't a cut and dried answer. And I think in those cases, you would ideally want an LLM to not just give you an answer, but to expose the questions. Well, some people believe this, some people believe this. Here are some key scriptures to consider, but ultimately, you're going to have to make your own conclusion about it.
All right, so we've heard a lot about what we're doing in terms of just a missional approach to AI in the past, couple days. And Eric even mentioned last year, there's a lot of conversation about having a more open approach to that. So for the past year, Gloo has been working quite a bit with a number of partners on benchmarks and standards. So benchmarks around human flourishing and standards that go with that. And so we'd like to provide just a really brief update on the status of where we're at. And then we're going to jump into a conversation with you, and we have some questions we'd love to hear from you on, because some of you might be working on similar things, and we have a responsibility to work together to collaborate. And so for just a quick status, I want to invite Akshaya up onto stage, and she's going to share where we're at. So please come up here, Akshaya.
So here at Gloo, we're focused on developing a set of human flourishing aligned benchmarks. So what does human flourishing mean? It's actually a set of papers that Harvard put out about what constitutes a strong community and a strong set of values. And so what we really need your help on is defining the faith and spirituality dimension. And I can kind of walk through the progress that we've made over the past few weeks. So we've been working with a team of data scientists at Valkyrie. And so far, what we've been doing is trying to pull a set of questions that come from the different dimensions. So going through different pieces of academia, licenses, exams, and open source repositories. And we built a tool that automates the evaluations on leading models. So what we do is we run the questions from these different dimensions and use a diverse set of LLM judges from OpenAI, Anthropic, and Llama, and trying to see how effective these models are across these dimensions, how effective are the LLM judges at evaluating the responses. And we define a persona for each dimension. So for example, you're a team of therapists or mental health experts if you're evaluating the physical and mental health dimension. And we give it a set of values that constitute each dimension and a rubric that it scores it on. So far, our faith data set, we've been building a custom set with at Gloo, and also pulling from an open source data set on Hugging Face. And again, we could really use your help in getting some good questions in there that we want to evaluate these models on. And so far, we've run tests on Gemini, DeepSeek, and Mistral, and currently running a test on Grok to evaluate how strong these models are on these human flourishing dimensions. And what we're trying to do is also build a scoring system that effectively captures the nuances of these responses. So not just the objective scoring that we see in like coding and math benchmarks, but also how well it does in these tangential dimensions. For example, if you ask it a finance question, not just how strong of a finance response is it, but does it also capture strong faith values and physical and mental health values? I think so far it's been very experimental, just seeing how strong LLM judges are at evaluating responses and how strict we want that criteria to be. And yeah, we're going to be working with you guys on this today and improving those benchmarks.
Thank you, Akshaya. Well, and this is not the only example that we have, so we have one more example to talk through.
Yeah, I mentioned before there's a variety of existing benchmarks out in the world, obviously, but in particular, this is one that I thought was interesting because it is in a particular subject domain in the same way that we're looking to develop one in the subject domain of Christian faith. And so what they did, this is for the legal industry, they basically took people who were lawyers, understood existing legal processes, and then tried to design benchmarks that reflected the tasks that lawyers do today. I think that's a great approach, and it raises some interesting questions. How do we understand existing processes for Bible study? There's some of you may have learned the kind of observation, interpretation, application model, but how do you actually apply that to a passage, and then how do we model that process? Those are the kinds of interesting questions that I think this can be an inspiration for. So we have a number of outcomes that we're hoping for today, and let me just run through those quickly. One is, thanks to all of you who are here, we're looking to identify and basically gather some people who would like to actively collaborate in the development of these benchmarks, to organize and share evaluation data. Again, Gloo has been working on some things. We'd like to be able to put that out for others to use and for also others to contribute to that. There may be specific subsets that apply to different areas of Christian life. Again, biblical understanding, perhaps apologetics, Christian life and discipleship. You can imagine lots of different areas where this might happen. Another thing is to simply be able to share and discuss together about how we do evaluation and how that can work in such a way that not only Gloo, but others who are developing Christian large language models, I hope that they will also see this as an opportunity to say, okay, here's an existing set of benchmarks I can run my system through and see how well it does in various areas. And so we want to encourage community members to, maybe I don't know whether we'll go all the way to leaderboards, like on Hugging Face, but some way to be able to say, I can take this and I can apply it in my context and hopefully even share the results so that there can be sort of an open and collaborative process around what are these different models really good for. So we're going to shift at this point to discussion. You'll see I totally shamelessly stole this idea from yesterday's presentation of having a Slido. So go ahead and scan that QR code if you're on Slido. And then in a minute, I'll flip over to the Slido screen up here so you can see people comments as they're contributing. But also, we have a microphone right here. And so I would love to invite those of you. The microphone helps others hear. I know you can hear yourself, but others will not be able to hear your question. And so if you want to share thoughts, ideas, whatever, line up at that microphone. Sorry to put you on the spot, but again, we're sharing together here, right? Line up at that microphone, and that way you can tell us what you're thinking about or questions you have or...
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes. So we really want this to be a discussion. We want to hear from you. So what we did up here on the screen is just put together a number of questions and prompts that maybe you hear this and you're like, I'd like to share something. So first of all, are you working on anything related to this that you want to share with others? Even you look at those, the human flourishing standards, there's a lot of areas to that. And maybe you're deep diving in an area to that. You think you might be able to contribute to the bigger conversation. We'd love to hear about that. Maybe you have some concerns about trust, about the approaches that we're taking based on your own experience. We'd love to hear about the concerns that you have. We really strongly desire to have an open and collaborative approach to this. So how might we go about doing that? How could we collectively build faith-aligned technology and share these standards and build on these standards and speak into these standards and benchmarks and test them and assess them? How can we work across the community and our organizations and our ministries to shape all of this? So there's a number of things we'd love to hear from you. If you have something you'd like to share, we encourage you to use the microphone. And if not, we're going to flip over to Slido and we will just start asking your questions for you. We will also be happy to walk around the room. If you don't want to get up here, we can do that too. So yeah, please. And maybe just really quickly, just name, organization, and then your comment.
My name is Stanley Samuel. I'm a bivocational pastor, so I'm an ordained minister within the CMA, but I manage a AICOE within a Fortune 9 company. Here it's in healthcare tech. So I know I talked to Nick a little while ago about this, but I'm just curious, are you including, because one of the struggles I had recently when I was doing using ChatGPT to search something, and I came up with the answers, and then there I found out there was something wrong with one of the part of the answer. Not everything was wrong, but there was part of the answer was wrong. And I checked with one of my pastor friends who has 40 years in ministry, and he was saying, Stanley, I think that is from Jehovah's Witness. So it was deceiving for me because it looked appealing. So I'm just wondering, are you thinking of including, there are pastors out there, and I think yesterday we heard that most of the adoption who are able to do things better are the people who are much older because they have a wealth of knowledge out there. So there's pastors out there who are, some of them are even retired, and they may love to offer their help back to you guys, making sure, because this is God's word. And we know when they did translation work, they would always actually did a ceremonial cleansing every time they changed something or they came to the name of God. So it's a holy word, and we are doing something very so powerful and taking God's word into the digital realm. So I'm just wondering how you are engaging pastors and experts out there who know the word well.
Yeah, well, I have a little bit of an answer. Again, I don't want this to be you ask a question and we answer because we're not the experts. We want this to be discussion, but I do have an answer for that one. And as a software developer, those of you who are in that activity know that one way to build your tests is when you find a bug, go write a test. In the same way, if you find a bug in the output of a large language model, that's the time to say, okay, I need to add an evaluation question that targets that particular, let's say, heresy that was just promoted by my LLM. So that's a great way to feed that information back and then incorporate that into what I expect will be an iteratively growing and expanding set of benchmarks.
Yeah, and also say that this is the whole reason that Gloo has an open initiative. We feel that we want to aggregate the contributions from everybody. We're better together when we do that. And there are a lot of, retired pastors are a great example, right? They would love to shape this, right? But maybe they aren't really comfortable with the technology side of it, but they want to maybe speak into, hey, we saw this question answer pair. We don't love, maybe there's a better way to do that or better answer to that. That's exactly what we're trying to create. If you want, I think there's quite the line, so it's okay. You can ask your question. You're okay. Just maybe come up, form the line so that there you go.
Yeah,
all right.
don't be shy.
Yeah,
Fill
don't
the
be
aisle.
shy.
Cool. Well, I guess in the question you had about like what problem is it solving, when you collect the data, it sounds like it's going to be explaining like which LLMs are or are not more faith aligned. But is there a plan to like be more prescriptive of, hey, here's what they should do to become more faith aligned? And like just how's that influence?
Yeah, we have other people in the room that are much smarter than I am on this too. Alex, do you want to speak to this one? It's a great idea, by the way.
It's a great question. I think we're thinking about building the whole pipeline out and open sourcing, take a model off the shelf, and then we have the benchmarks and standards to say this is good enough. We're also working with Barna to actually get pastors in the room and start saying, hey, we do need to review. You got 99% of it right, but you actually missed that 1% and it's coming from this perspective. That's actually not a part of the answer, right? So what we're trying to do is say, hey, we want to be really transparent, really clear on what is happening. We also want to be really clear on how it's happening, and then say, hey, we don't actually have all the answers. I probably missed something. You maybe missed something, Pat. Like, it would be great to know what other people think as well and say, hey, there's a lot of different people we want at the table to contribute, to have a voice, denominations, perspectives, and that's the whole purpose of this. This is the first step. This isn't the final chapter.
It also speaks to, I think, why we need to put out more research and more articles about what we're doing, what we're building, what we're not doing yet, we would like to do. Like, this is a great example, right? And we also want to shape technology, not just in the Christian ecosphere. We want to shape technology in the world, right? So our hope is that these standards and these benchmarks encourage others that are creating really great technology that's much better funded than ours, that maybe they will adopt that too, and they will start asking questions of their own. All right, next question.
Great.
You can keep the microphone, Alex, because you'll be asked more questions here.
Sounds good.
Just come up here. There we go.
Hi, I'm Kathy Barisa. I teach computer science at a Christian college. And what hit me here is there's a beautiful crowdsource that you guys could use. Talk to all the theology departments at all the Christian colleges. There's a CCCU, Poland Catholic colleges, and ask them to have their students who are studying this give you data and do your evaluations. You will get thousands, hundreds of thousands of students doing this for you.
That's right. That's exactly the
great
whole
suggestion.
premise of it. And we talk about the collective might, right? Like, if we can tap into that passion, those learnings, I mean, that's exactly what we want to do and scale that up.
And they're the youngsters.
And they got energy. They're young still. They don't have to go to bed at 9 o'clock because they have little kids at home.
Hi, Marcus Shorting, University of Chicago, AI and Faith. So when a church is looking to deploy a large language model, allow their congregation to start using it, one of the first questions will be, will it lead to heresy? Is it going to remain orthodox? So, presumably, these benchmarks need to start evaluating orthodoxy. What does that mean? We haven't settled on orthodoxy amongst ourselves, and how are we supposed to be ensuring that large language models are holding to that? Thanks.
Great question without an easy answer. I mean, I think in part all this work will be helping to answer that question. I do think there's a sense of big O orthodoxy. Small o, not the Orthodox Church as a denomination, but Orthodox Christianity. It's encapsulated in things like the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed, though there's not enough detail there for all the things that a large language model can do. But I think we'll have to be sensitive to and discovering that as we go along.
I would also add that these benchmarks and standards also, they're meant to also tell us where this technology should not be deployed, right? I think the most important thing is there's a sense or potentially a vibe that maybe you want to just deploy it everywhere, right? Like, we want to replace humans, we want to do this thing, we want to do that thing, we want to optimize for this use case. And the goal is, that's a hard question. It's a really hard question. We're hoping that this type of rigor and insight and analysis with everyone's feedback, it tells us, hey, let's take a step back and pause. Maybe we can get the technology there. Maybe we can't. It's really good at this thing. It's not that good at that thing, right? And that's what the benchmarks and standards on a lot of the models today do. It's really good at coding. It's really good at math. It's really good at, this use case. As we get into agents, agents are going to have some autonomy in systems. Where do those get deployed? The question is not can we? We can do a lot. The question is where, when, and when does a human need to be in the loop, right? A model can actually do a lot of things. Where should we be putting human creativity? Where should we put our voice into the model, not just like outsourcing it to the model to do everything?
I'll also say just a shout out to Faith Tech, who has an amazing redemptive playbook, because all the things you said are spot on, and sometimes the question is just, should we at all do that? And I think we really need to struggle through that as Christian technologists and think about, we have a responsibility here, and so when we have that responsibility, when should we be applying things, and when should we not? When should we not kind of sit that one out, right? All right, great question, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, it's related. I mean, I'm trying to link with Richard Chang's talk as well. And I remember the first example is self-evaluation, whether my faith is orthodox. And I think there's a lot of issue like evaluating others as well as, same to evaluating ours. And then I like that at the end he says that, it's open-ended. This is the chatbot, he may not have all the answers. So I think the way you answer the spirit it is a very open, about our own orthodoxy, but it's an open discourse, and we all and help to bring out the best. But then, of course, guarding maybe we will define some boundaries, but there's still opening for further exploration and dialogue and such.
Yeah, that's great.
I would add, we can't sit this out. Like, the boundaries will get set whether the faith and redemptive space is there or not, right? So what we're trying to do is say, we're still in the first inning. We're at the top of the first inning with AI, and how it's deployed, where it's deployed, and asking the question, should it be deployed? If we're not in the room having conversations around, hey, we have a voice here. We think that there's a perspective on community and human creativity and where it should get deployed, we are, I would say, missing an opportunity to make the technology redemptive and be put into places where it can be used for good.
Yeah, we have a moral imperative, right? And now is the time to shape this and to show up, and the only way to participate in the technological revolution is to show up, to engage, to participate. So some of you might be sitting here listening and hoping for broadcast here, but what we're inviting you to do is collaborate with us. It takes all of us going forward. So we want to end, because we only have 30 minutes and we promised we would stay on time. And we have a lot of questions, right? And we will work to, the input here, we will work to answer these questions in other ways through articles and other talks. But we want to end today by talking a little bit about just working together going forward. So, we really want to promote this open discussion, identify spaces for discussion, share our data, share the models we might be building, share the tools we're building on top of the models and the APIs. And to do that together, to promote to adopt each other's technology, not to duplicate things, right? There's a lot that we want to do together. It requires a more open posture, which we've talked a lot about. So open source allows us to have kind of all a seat at the table. Gloo Open Initiative is going to be shaped by a lot of these questions that we are talking about here. We're hoping to do research. We're hoping to build more things together. We're hoping to really encourage the adoption of faith-aligned, faith-based technology. So how to get involved going forward? Because again, there's more questions than we can answer in the time that we have together. There's probably a lot more that you want to say. And this isn't necessarily the best venue to do that. So, next slide. We have one more QR code. We would love for you, if you want to participate in this going forward, if you want to be engaged in this conversation, we would love to just have you sign up on this simple form and join what will start as a mailing list, and maybe that turns into a community somewhere, or a constellation of communities, or a Slack channel. We're not sure yet, honestly. We're not sure what this looks like. We would love to hear from you about that. But I think the first way to start is to just fill out this QR code.
Yeah. Linus Pauling quote, "The best way to have good ideas is to have lots of ideas." And so, Sean Boisen quote, "The best way to have lots of ideas is to get lots of heads thinking together." And so we really want to encourage you to contribute to this effort.
Yeah, so we'll hang out for a bit after the session today. We have a few more people from Gloo and Biblica here in the room, and we'd love to talk to you. One more? Yeah, please. You have the final comments, so no pressure.
So you all look like people are interested in measurement and ways to bring home these ethical standards and desires. We have a workshop on that in this room at 4:15. Just on that subject, we have several IEEE senior managers who have been doing AI certified, now looking at that from a Christian perspective. And Marcus will be on the panel. I think JP is going to be participating. It's more of a discussion roundtable, and it's all about collaboration, just like you're talking about. So I would invite you to come back to this room at 4:15 for a discussion of that. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.